Hello, everyone. I think we should be live. Welcome back to Chill Game Learn. It's been a pretty hot minute since we've done one of these. Brian wasn't on the channel the last time we did Chill Game Learn. I think it was like multiple years ago at this point, and it's really cool to be doing it again. And welcome everyone who is joining us. If you're here from the before times, excited to see what Chill Game Learn is about in this new reiterated form, welcome. And if you're brand new to this video series that we do, you are more than welcome joining us as well on this Friday evening or Friday afternoon or morning or wherever you might be. I am joined by Brian, and my name is Dara, and you're watching The Red Path. And on Chill Game Learn, this is a somewhat of an interesting kind of show because we talk a little bit more about kind of umbrella topics that cover a wide range of things in 40k. Not necessarily, is this unit the best World Leader unit, or is this a World Leaders tier list, which you kind of know and love us for. But Chill Game Learn is more of a meta discussion around the wider topics that affect 40k or general tabletop wargaming, and how we can be better at them, how we can learn from them, and what we can do about it. But in this new format, we said we'd do it live so we can get a little bit more audience interaction, and we will be putting this up on Spotify as well, if you want to listen to it that way too. But as I said, I'm joined today by Brian, and we're going to have a little bit more of a kind of a chilled out. We're going to bring the chill back into Chill Game Learn. We're going to ease into it nice and slowly and talk about how we've been doing. And Brian, how have you been doing in this last week?
Been doing fine. I'm a little sad that about the Tampa Open. I was actually slated to be going there, and I'd be there right now, and I'd be playing in the event right now because it would be starting on Friday. But I don't think the venue like exists anymore. The hurricane hit them pretty hard down there. My brother lives in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is like the outskirts of the bay. But he's fine. Everything was intact. Downtown just got swamped. It was a pretty rough one. I'm thankful to not be caught in that, but also I'm sad that I can't be rolling dice right now.
Yeah, I was trying to get you to fly in through the hurricane before it got officially cancelled. I was like, I think you should take that risk.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, maybe not my best advice that I've given you, but advice that I still stand by nonetheless.
Blood for the blood god.
Right?
Um, it would have been a fun event. I'm really sad that because I've never been to like a true US Open before.
Mm.
I mean, like Adepticon and WCW, it's more closer to WCW would count, but that's not really the size. I think last year was only like 180 people. So now I still got that thirst in me, and I saved up a bunch of money for this open, which all got refunded. So I'm actually looking at LVO right now. It's on my radar.
Ooh, LVO is a spicy one. Yeah. I'm sure there will be lots of people who watch the Red Path that will be at LVO and would very much like to see you there. It's an interesting tournament, very big, obviously, and we just had the LGT as well, which was also pretty awesome this year. Shout out to Liam VSL for winning that one with Chaos Space Marines, and Brian Sipe as well, who came in second with the Orcs. Two factions that I believe the wider meta community has decided were very bad. So funny how they can rise to the top, right?
Yeah, the Liam's list actually like lit a fire in me. I
Yeah,
think
it's cool.
CSM's
It's really cool.
I love CSM, but I really got like I was really disincentivized to like try to figure out a good meta list because I hate the Curse Cultist spam. I mean, I think they have their place, but I
Yeah, they
hated
do.
the fact that it was yeah, they do. I hated the fact that they were like 2 to 3 squads in every single
Yeah.
detachment, and they were just they currently they are supporting CSM quite a bit.
Mm.
So seeing that side of CSM from Liam was really refreshing. Um, yeah, that got me looking at veterans too. I'm actually really excited to be trying some veterans in the long war. Um, Also, anybody who says orcs are bad is gaslighting you. Just Warhorde is so good. It's so good. I mean, I get that there's problems with the index or with the codex attachments. The index attachment's fine. The codex attachments need some help. But overall, orcs aren't a weak army in general. I don't know.
I
That's
mean,
my
there's
vibe.
I would say there's not really a weak army in the game right now. I mean, like I don't know. We were talking about this in the Discord during the week, right? About orcs and stuff, and it's like they kind of have that space marine problem where not so much that it's new players playing the faction, but it's people who are playing them at a tournament level, but fundamentally don't care that much about a tournament result because they're just like, I'm here with my orcs and I want to have a good time, and that's awesome. But broadly speaking, those people will most of the time end up going 2 and 3, right? And that's going to skew their win rate way down.
And I will comment too, like orcs does have some problems, namely that like you get punished for being creative with orcs.
Yeah,
Like a Space Marine player would get punished for being creative with Space Marines, right? Like as soon as you start pulling out like the mid-tier vehicles and stuff, you can really start to see the performance of the army drop quite a bit. So some internal balancing is probably needed, but
I do
I
see
think
Boarding 91 making a point that Imperial agents does exist, and that is true. When I said that all factions are balanced, much like a lot of other people, forgot that Imperial agents does now actually exist in this vacuum that we
but
live in.
like, are they actually an army?
Are they really real? Are they gonna be real next year? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It's yeah, it's a funny one. I do think orcs are still very good. I think most armies in the hands of a good player can be taken to win an event, and in the hands of a decent player can easily go positive at an event. I just think that the meta currently is very nice. It's quite fair. Broadly speaking, if you're bringing an army to a tournament, there isn't necessarily one army that you're like, I have to watch out for this army because everyone's going to be bringing it. Like, I mean, right now it's
Yeah,
super varied.
I'd say like the bane of like if I walked into a tournament and like I got paired into something and I just hard eye roll, it'd probably be sisters at the moment, but like
Yeah,
that's not that bad. I
in
mean, sister
like comparatively speaking, in
to,
other
oh yeah,
metas that
like
have existed even this year, it's not that bad, right? You know.
WCW last year, half of the room was Eldar or CSM.
Mm.
And I had when I was tournament prepping and getting ready for that event, Eldar, 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 that was all I was grinding. And you know what? I played 5 out of 8 of my rounds?
Yeah, it was
Eldar.
all
So it
Eldar,
was
right? Yeah.
awful. Triple Night Spinners, bye-bye, burn in hell. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I see a lot of people jumping in chat. Welcome. Great to see you all. If you want to ask us some questions, we'll try and get to them when we can. And obviously, if you super chat them, we will take priority over those. But I do see Warboss saying or asking us a question: Would we see that the meta caters to more elite armies currently, or hyper elite armies, as he said? And
I
I
mean,
actually think it's the opposite. I think the meta right now is very favored towards MSU and go wide armies.
yeah, it's a mixed bag because you have armies that are traditionally very elite, like your Thousand Sons, Grey Knights, and Sisters. But even then, they're going as MSU as possible. You're seeing 6 squads of 5 rubrics. You're seeing as many little Dominion squads running around as possible with tank support, right? Like it's not super death bally right now. I mean, maybe Blood Angels is the only, even then, like
Even
they
then,
have
they're
their
still
three
bringing a
death
lot of
bricks. Yeah,
units.
then it's
Yeah,
three
yeah,
by five
yeah.
JPI, 3x5
And
scouts.
us, like an army which has historically been quite elite. When I'm writing a tournament list right now, I'm packing in as much MSU as I can. Pariah in general, it feels to me that it's very midboard brawly, which is good in a lot of ways. I like a good midboard brawl. You're not really incentivized to attack your opponent's deployment zone a lot of the time. You maybe want 1 or 2 units in there, but you don't actually want to commit your force there. So that means that you're battling over what is generally 3 central objectives. And if you're battling over those 3 central objectives, you want a lot of relatively decent units which you can feed into the meat grinder over a period of successive turns in order to get the victory. Because in a mid-table battle, if you have 1 or 2 hyper elite bricks that aren't necessarily durable enough to last more than 2 turns, you are going to lose that game. I think in this meta, you really want like to be pushing, decent 5-man marine squads, 3 8-pound variants into the meat grinder constantly to make sure. Oh, I've lost Brian.
We're alive.
Are you okay?
Yeah, we'll see what's the problem.
Okay.
Technical
Brian is
difficulties.
theoretically still here. But right now you just have me. And I'm super zoomed in actually, which is quite funny. All right, I'm gonna catch up with chat and see what they're saying. Bum, 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 bum. Let's see here. Iceman Fool saying the current list is a veterans detachment tank and 10 Terminator spam. That's pretty fun. I like that. When I played Lawrence at No Retreat, even though he's running Emperor's Children, it was the veterans of the Long War. And I actually got found out pretty hard in that game. It was a lot of reactive move stuff, which I was just like, oh wow, not enjoying this. This is pretty rough. Darth Window wants to say, how would you deal with Helbrecht and a 10 block of Sword Brethren? Would Mo and Tenzerx do the job with fights first? The answer is no. So one of my relatively regular practice buddies runs the big brick. What is it Sword Brethren? Oh, Brian was momentarily back and we've lost him again. Or is he back? Hey. Okay. You're here. Yeah, you're good. You're good. You're stable. How would you deal with it, Brian? So the Sword Brethren and Helbrecht's brick.
One of two ways.
I don't think there's actually one unit in our army.
Oh my God.
God again. I don't think there's one unit in our army that actually one taps them.
No. Nothing in our army one taps them, especially if they're on Righteous Crusaders.
Yeah.
I play against that.
No, nothing one taps them if they have Grimaldus in the brick. If it's Helbrecht, then they will die.
No. They take a lieutenant with Tannhauser's bones, which essentially makes
Sorry,
him
he gives
Grimaldus.
them that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole army's unkillable. There's two solutions I have for that because I play against Black Templars a lot. Is either A, you have to cripple the squad, or B, you just lob Angron at it and smash. Don't sweep. Just try to kill as many as possible. Whatever you're going to throw at the brick's probably going to die. Usually my favorite solution is just throwing Mo at it and saying Mo's dead. But Mo is going to go suicide missile, and he's going to knock out Helbrecht as well as ignore the lieutenant. Don't even bother with the lieutenant. It takes half damage, has a 5-up field of pain and 6 wounds. Like, that's just not worth going after. Precision out Helbrecht, and then try to get as many sword bros out of that squad as possible. Mo plus some 8-bound support's good enough. They're gonna fight on death, and Mo is gonna get shredded. That's just that. My other solution to that is
I actually think you can counter that because what I normally do is I put in 10 jackals with them and just wide string the jackals where I'm like, yep, sure, you guys can fight on death, but I will literally be like, roll for this guy. Now roll for this guy. Now roll for this guy. All of them fighting jackals. And then it's only really I'm actually going to have a video dropping on this possibly end of next week or start of next week where we go through all these kind of combat janky maneuvers and stuff. So we'll dive more into it there. But there are ways around it. You just have to be clever and you have to be when you go into that unit, you need to be super committed.
And one of the funny things that you can do to take advantage of that too is typically those lists will run a Land Raider up the middle of the board.
Yeah.
I like doing what's called lock them in the car, where you just wrap the Land Raider with it doesn't take much. I think 3 8-bound almost completely lock that squad in their car if you separate them 2 inches, then 2 inches. You section off like half of the Land Raider so that they can't disembark. And then you just forget it exists, and then you table the rest of their army, and then you do that like 3 turns in a row. Yes, they can overwatch you. Yes, you got to get a little sneaky with it. There's a lot of on the fly stuff.
Another relatively good option is just go in with 2 things, kill the Land Raider, pile into them, and smash them when they come out of it with the second unit because they can't fight on death then. So you can just be
Correct.
like, cool, free. But there's ways and means around it. But that's not really necessarily what we're here to talk about today. So yeah, have you been doing any hobby in the last week, Brian?
Yeah, getting ready for Tampa, I've actually repainted my entire army from the ground up.
Your entire army?
Entire army.
Your entire army? Did you paint every model in your new army?
I painted every model, yeah. I have this gorgeous Angron I did by myself too.
I saw your Angron, dude. It's pretty bad, actually, I would say. You know? I don't think you should be happy.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it was a rush job.
I would
that's
say
my
so.
take from it.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like it's pretty slap chop, you know.
I would go grab him if I could, but Dara painted me up a nice little surprise for
took me what, like
my new list.
The entire summer? More?
It was a bit, but you had a lot going on.
Yeah.
There was a brass scorpion getting painted alongside him, and then also some berserkers and stuff he needed to get done. But
I feel like
the army's looking really good.
Week, which I was like, oh yeah, actually, even though I have a lot of war leaders, I need to add that unit. But...
Yeah, it's just I'm sad now because I was gonna debut it, hopefully cracking some skulls down at Tampa, maybe get on stream playing some of the Art of War guys, but
Yeah, WCW man. We'll see you
WCW.
there.
Well, I can't
Yeah,
play American, so I got to go bully Glasshammer now.
true. That will be enjoyable.
From
Yeah,
boarding
it's cool though. I
9-1.
mean, you got like a lot of you've discovered streaking grime, right? I finally like tricked someone into the magic of grimdark
That stuff
weathering.
slaps. Like you
Yeah,
can be a
dude.
god awful painter, dunk it in that stuff, it comes out looking like crap, and then you dunk it again in mineral spirits, and it comes out looking like the Mona Lisa. Like it's just chef's
Yep.
kiss.
Yep.
Uh,
And
and
in
I'm
other
working on my
content that
Night
we
Lords.
sorry,
Yeah,
go on.
I'm working on my Night Lords right now too. Now that I'm done painting red, I'm tired
Yeah.
of painting red. I'm done for a while.
Nice. I actually officially started my chaos cults this week. I painted my well, I have started painting my first accursed cultist. For anyone following me on Instagram, might have seen a little sneak peek of that dude. But I am thinking about bringing chaos cults to No Retreat next year. So, want to do a really nice job from my chaos cult army. So we're gonna get that done up over the next year. It has like I think 240 models, and I've got about a year. So you're talking roughly a model every day and a half. It's basically, which
I know how you
anyone
work.
who
You're not
knows
going to
me
start till a
is,
month before.
yeah, it's not going to happen, right? But one thing that was funny that Brian had to deal with in our group chat today, or sorry, not today. I think it was yesterday. So at No Retreat, obviously they allow legends, right? That's why I brought the Brass Scorpion to the one just gone. And in my infinite wisdom and ability to recall information, I remembered that Chaos Space Marines actually has a whole legend section just for the Renegades and Heretics from Forge World, which I am actually getting quite a bunch of for this army. So it was like having a look through that, and I was like, oh, a lot of these data sheets are pretty bad, but still kind of funny. You can actually get a Khorne Ogren who has like basically flesh hounds on a leash, which is pretty sick. So
Yeah, that model does look sick.
yeah, and you could actually have up to 7 hounds in that unit, which I'm like, man, my man has
That's such a
seven
weird
leads.
number.
Yeah, it's super weird. Okay, I think because it's like 7 hounds in the guy, so it makes eight, maybe because it's Khorne. Anyway, I'm getting a bunch of renegade ogres, but what I did find was that you can attach a renegade psyker to an accursed cultist squad, and he gives them a 4-up invuln and a 4-up feel no pain against psychic wounds.
Why is it whenever you go to No Retreat, you just want to traumatize Grey Knight
I'm just like,
players?
find me the Grey Knight player. Poor Steven, if he's watching, I'm just like, I'm coming for you in a very different way next year.
It's unintentional but intended.
Yeah. So that was my week. I was messing around with a bunch of stuff like that, and still kind of coming down from No Retreat and thinking about my next couple of projects. But yeah, it was pretty fun. I have a tournament in 2 weeks, more or less, in a tournament that I kind of wasn't originally going to, but now I am. And I'm running Ryan Bell's list because obviously straight after No Retreat, the most sensible thing to do is go win at all costs and bring the best world leader list that I possibly can. So took that out for a test run this week, and yep, it was quite humbling to run a list that good and realize just how much I was playing with a hand tied my back for the last year, which was quite amusing. Have we lost you again, Brian? Oh, you're back.
It's Zoom. Zoom keeps taking me
Right.
down. It's not my camera. It's the software. It's not me. Well, it is me,
So
but
yeah, that was the week.
and
It was a good week.
worth noting that I actually submitted Ryan's list for the Tampa Open.
Yeah, Ryan's list is just amazing, and it feels amazing to play on the table. It was super nice to just be like, ah, yes, go fast. And it has so much stuff in it. Like it's just an incredible amount of units in that list. But maybe we'll cover that another day.
Uh,
Um, yeah. Shall we move on to the main topic of the video?
Yeah, let's look at you want to look at the chat real quick. I think we got a couple questions.
Yes, let's touch on some questions before we move on.
Yep.
Obviously, thank you everyone who's sticking with us as well. You are watching Chill Game Learn on the Red Path. If you want to support us, you can super chat us here. You can check out any of the links down below. You can hop into our Discord and have a good time, or you can support us on Patreon as well, which is the best way to do it if you want to do it at all. So, have we any questions, Brian?
Yep. I will be playing or I'll be playing at WCW. I think I'm flying in on November 20th. War Boss, and then boarding 91. feel like it doesn't make sense for us to not take MSU. I'd rather. Yeah, world leaders are in a weird spot where our MSU is already really elite anyways. I mean,
Yeah, right.
I think the definition for MSU from us is just not attaching our characters,
Hmm.
that being the Juggernaut Lord and Vocatus.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of multiple bricks of 6 Exalted 8 Bound. I still think the one is incredibly necessary. But yeah.
Yeah. We'll probably be talking about that probably this coming week, as we are expecting the field manual to give us a points update. So we will be, I suppose, sitting down to discuss that. But today we're going to talk about an interesting topic. It's the main topic for the show for the first episode of the reinvented Chill Game Learn. And this is a topic which has actually seen a fair bit of discussion in the last month or so in the Warhammer community. Not for a specific reason, but just it just so happened that quite a few notable sites published articles around the topic of cheating in 40k and what to do about cheating. Amongst these was an article which was written by Mike Pestilence from Warhammer, which, if you want to check out a really good article on the subject, I would suggest that you start there because I think he did a very, very good job of succinctly putting together a lot of points about cheating in 40k. And obviously, on the Red Path, this is something that we're pretty passionate about. Like, we, generally speaking, try to play the game with as good an intention as possible to be the best possible opponent. And we really kind of put that side of the hobby before, I would say, anything else, especially winning a game. Our ethos is very much like being fair, being accepting, being welcoming, and being a good person. So I suppose it makes sense that we kind of weigh in on what reasonably is a difficult topic to discuss because it's very, very broad. Cheating in 40k, like the reasons for it, what to do about it, and how to avoid it are kind of the main talking points that we're going to go through today, right, Brian?
Yeah. Also setting yourself up so that you can prevent feels bad situations from occurring regarding to sportsmanship too. That can be misinterpreted as cheating. I think that word is probably overused a little bit in the 40k community, cheating. Like it's easy to fall back on saying that, yeah, my opponent misplayed, that's me. He cheated me out of the game. Like, no, there's a lot of situations where it's just genuinely this game is such a big ball of mess to interpret. That usually just giving the benefit of the doubt is the way to go. But as we've seen, specifically as like War Games Live and Tabletop Live and a lot of the other streaming services have been blowing up, and streaming 40K is bigger than ever. Players are getting watched by thousands of people, and mistakes are being judged. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
that might be one of the things that has kind of like accelerated the discussion around the topic in the last year is the prevalence of quite a lot of main and big streaming platforms now to actually watch the game, so people are being scrutinized a lot more. And whether intentional or not, mistakes do happen in a game of 40k. Joe always says on War Games Live that there is never a perfect game of 40k, and he is correct because we all do make a blunder every now and then. But um, distinguishing the line where a mistake crosses over into something which is like harmful is very, very difficult because you can make an honest mistake which impacts the outcome of a game, and that's not a good thing. You can make that mistake. You might not mean to do it, but it can happen, and it can cause the game to end in a way which it wouldn't otherwise have done. I remember LGT last year. I was playing a Thousand Suns guy in round 3, I think it was. No, 4, maybe. I'm not sure. And 10th edition was pretty new. I was maybe not as familiar as I should have been with the rules, and in I think it was turn 4 or turn 5, I drew 2 cards and I discarded one of them to draw another card with a CP, and I'd already done that in that game. And the card that I discarded, I obviously couldn't score, and the card that I drew, I actually won the game by scoring. Um, and thankfully, Jack actually pointed out to me, because he happened to be sitting at the table, that once the game finished up, he pointed out that you can only do that stratagem once, which at the time I didn't know, but that's a good example of how a mistake can change the outcome of the game. And the way that I resolved it was I basically went back to my opponent and said, "Hey, we need to fix this right now." And it actually ended up that we drew the game instead of me winning it because we went back and we sorted through it. Because thankfully, Jack caught it early enough that I was able to do something about it. But if he had not known and maybe I was recounting the game later that night and someone else said it to me, it would have been way too late to do something about it. And I feel like that's a very common thing that happens where, and I've been at the discussion, I've been at a table where someone is running me through a game that they played, and I say, you can't do that. That thing that you've just said that you did, you just can't do that. And the thing that kind of bugs me, right, is when you're having that conversation with someone and you point out that they made a mistake that is impactful. I don't know if you find this, but a lot of the time when I'm having that discussion, the first thing someone will say will be, "Oh, but it doesn't matter because it didn't change the outcome of the game." And I'm like,
Well,
okay, sometimes fair enough if it's very small, but other times I'm like, no, there's no way that that is not changing the outcome of the game. I
and
don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I had a similar experience. It's a lot more personal for me too. When I was at the Ottawa Major CTC, um, I actually lost my fourth game, even though I finished 5-0. There was a specific instance. I was playing against Knights. I was running across the board. There was no cover. I was just getting shot up, and the game was pretty decisively over by about turn 4. And after the game, I went and got a beer, and I was just chilling to myself. And then my opponent actually came up to me and acknowledged that he had made a few mistakes in his game, um, namely that the autocannon Holverins, they have anti-fly 2 if they are within their own deployment zone. And I think he used like 3 or 4 of them to gun Angron down. And he was playing as if he had anti-fly 2 the whole time, and they were not in his deployment zone. He didn't do it intentionally. He just misremembered, whatever, and absolutely gunned Angron down, which swung the whole game, right? Like Angron claps 2 knights a turn. Um, that's enough to win a game for a world leader player by himself if Angron gets a good charge on a few knights. Um, Anyways, he came up to me, acknowledged the mistake. We went back to the table and we actually re-rolled that exact situation that Angron was in without anti-fly 2 up. And he even said we even let him charge like a war dog into him. And he said, "Okay, I failed to kill Angron. I'm going to concede the game to you and flip the score the other way." Uh, and he did his best to make it right. And then I went on to win the GT. So saying that like, oh,
Yeah.
just mistakes don't matter. I won a GT because, or I would have potentially lost out on winning a GT because my opponent made a mistake.
Yeah.
Now, that's nowhere near an accusation of cheating, but acknowledging mistakes, it feels good too to
Yeah,
like
it does.
be the better person to come up and like at least be fair with it. Like,
Because you're
truly, there
always
are
gonna know,
some.
if you walk away from that and don't do anything about it, you're always, at least in my opinion, if it was me, you're always gonna be thinking about like, I did not win that game honestly, you know, and okay, so before we get into the real nitty gritty of like why people cheat, which I think is actually probably one of the most important things that we're going to talk about, but we're gonna maybe start it off by going through how prevalent cheating is in 40k. Just like broadly, Brian, how common do you think cheating is? Say you've got 100 people at a
We got
GT.
100 people in the room. I mean, I've TO'd. I've witnessed cheating. I've witnessed slow play. I've witnessed a little bit of it, but it's usually only like 1 to 2 tables in a room of 200 tables for me. And usually they're known and it's recurring personalities. But I'd say overall it's not super common. And of the people that I have run into in the past that have taken advantage of the rules or their opponent, just take straight up taking advantage of their opponent, they weren't going to win either way anyways. So like I'd say it's not super common, but it's still something that you will encounter probably in a couple events throughout a year, assuming you're going to a few events. And it could be small stuff like dice manipulation. That's probably the most common one. That's the easiest one to like see. And then again, it's hard to draw the line at cheating or mistake. And if you're looking from the outside, you have to be very like there's a pattern you have to look for to actually call it cheating. So being able to draw that line is important, but I'd say 2 out of 100 or tables, maybe 3 out of 100 tables.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more common than that. I'm just gonna straight up say
Really.
it.
I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
have more
I
faith
I think
in
I think
mistakes versus cheating. That's like the
yeah.
line I'm trying to draw.
Well, so I would say there's like yeah, because it's very difficult to actually like clearly define all the different facets of it. Um, because the way I see it is like you've got your mistakes, you've got your very honest mistakes, which are just like you fucked up, whatever. But you've also got like what I call like soft cheating, and then you've got hard cheating. And I think the hard cheating is maybe one or two tables in a room of 200 people. That's like the hard cheating because you can spot it, right? You can look at the table and you can, or maybe if you're TOing, you get a report, and that's like the really easy stuff, which is just like they're going widely outside of the rules of the game to cheat and hope they get away with it, right? So you've got like the famous Eldar toilet dice. You've got a lot of other, big cheating scandals that have happened where it's like, this
Stuff
is
that makes the
obvious,
internet,
it's
yeah.
uncontestable, this is cheating, right? That's hard cheating to me. But soft cheating is what I think is actually extremely common in 40k. Now, I'm not talking like every second game you play. I'm talking maybe like if you've got 100 people, you might have 10 to 15 people who are soft cheaters. And soft cheating is like, it's the dice thing that you said, where it's like maybe they roll 10 dice and they get 5 hits, but they pick up 6 dice, right? That's one way of doing it. But I actually think the most common form of soft cheating is what I call the 7-inch marine move, which is like basically every time they move something, they move it just a little bit more than it can actually move, and that's like really common. And that's not something that you can actually like be like, oh, I made a mistake, right? Because it's like you've got a measuring tape. The measuring tape has the numbers. All you need to do is look at your data sheet. Look under M for movement. What number is it? Match it to your measuring tape. That's as far
Turn
as you can go. You can't
Turns
go
out
past
having
that.
the never having to pick the +2 movement blessing, but always having it is pretty good.
Yeah,
It's pretty
right.
good.
So that's what I think is super common, and I think at a maybe more competitive level in the game, most people widely accept that movement is the most important aspect of the game. So if you're giving yourself an extra couple of inches on every move that you make, you're getting a huge advantage in the game. Like I've played games where someone is like moving in the first turn and ending on objectives, which I'm like, there is literally no possible way you can end on that objective. You literally can't have that movement, And I think that's really, really common. Then there's obviously dice manipulation. There's the really vague one where it's basically like you're moving through something. You can tell that your opponent isn't necessarily intimately familiar with your army, so you fudge your numbers a little bit. Maybe it can be the number of attacks you have. Maybe it can be the strength characteristic or the AP. Maybe you say that a stratagem costs 1 CP when it's actually costing you 2. Like, there's lots of different ways that you can soft cheat during a game, and your opponent will walk away from that game and they will think that they have not been cheated. And I think that's the definition of soft cheating, is when your opponent walks away and doesn't realize that they've been gamed. And I think that happens an awful lot, especially against newer players. When you have a very experienced player who feels like it's almost like they're right to win the game because they're like, I am very good, you are very bad. I will take advantage of your lack of knowledge and I will do things which I know I can get away with because you don't have familiarity, or maybe you don't even have the confidence to tell me that what I'm doing is wrong because I'm new or you're new in the game. And I think that's very common. And if you look across a tournament hall as a TO, you don't see that, right? Because you're
No.
not watching every single table and every single dice roll. And if you talk to the people after a game, Bob, who has just come into his first Warhammer tournament and played, I don't know, some other guy, Steven, who has just cheated him in a soft way. You ask Bob, hey, did you have a good game? Bob will probably say yes. It's like, did you think Steven was a good opponent? Yeah, he was. He was really good. He was generally, what it is he was a lot of fun at the table because they know they don't have to stress about it because they can get away with a lot of stuff. And I think that is what's really common. And that is probably the most problematic behavior because it eventually does spiral into cases of hard cheating, in my
And
opinion.
I think that's a good segue into why people cheat too.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of like the most sus instances that I've experienced personally are either at the low end or the high end of the spectrum. You have the players that are at their, for some reason, they're 1 and 3, and they're just going crazy at the table, making stuff up for game five. And then also at the other end of the spectrum, I've seen your 4-0 players fighting for their chance to be at the top table, to be playing their 5-0 game, also be doing it. Sm Similar stuff like you're talking about. And I
Dude, you
think
know where
like you,
the sweatiest segment is though? I always tell this one as the example. It's like game five, you're 2-2.
oh, that's like yeah,
Fuck
that's
me.
make or break.
That is like the ninth circle of hell. Everyone there is like, if I lose this game, I'm gonna go negative. And I
The
remember when I was doing all around the world leaders with Mikey from Hellstorm, we were talking about that and how it's like who the fuck cares, you know? Like, what are you gonna go do? Go home to your mom or your girlfriend and be like, guess what? I went 3-2. Like, am I the best? You know? That is like the. It's so sweaty though. Some people are just like are really really invested in it, and I'm just like, brother, like
and
we are so mid right now.
and and like I said, I think it's like a similar. It's then you like get to the next level because I think that's where the hard cheating happens. And you get to the next level where they get sneaker because now you got the players that don't want to get caught, but also want to edge their way into playing for the 5-0. And I'd say that's like where I see some of the spiciest stuff because you got to know what you're looking for to be able to see it sometimes. And a lot of those players, like you said earlier, are the type that are like, oh, I'm just better than you, so I deserve to win, and you deserve to lose because you're worse than me at the game, so they're going to take advantage of you. They tend to start to flip on a dime as the game starts to get closer, and I've witnessed this myself as a newer player. I'm a relatively new player, coming up, doing better. I've actually seen a lot of those games where those personalities completely shift, where you have those jolly old folks suddenly turn into like knuckles on the table. They're going to nickel and dime you and get everything they can. And by the way, guys, like these instances that I'm talking about aren't common at all. Like they happen. Everybody will experience them, but it's not an expectation. Like when you go into an event, like 9 out of 10 of my events are squeaky clean. I'd say my opponents, I hold them to a pretty high standard and they actually like keep to it. And then like there's a few skills and like strategies I'll talk about for like how to prevent that, I think we'll get into. Um, but usually those players that are having to like smooth talk their way into a top table get found out as soon as they get to the top table because then they're going to be playing against somebody who is going to be watching them, who it does know their army rules in and out, who will call them out. And cheaters tend to also not be good at the game too, just in general. They tend to like think about it like you're getting an advantage, taking advantage of your opponent to get in the position you're in. As soon as you take that edge out, now you're just an average Joe playing against somebody who knows their stuff. So usually they get found out. Sometimes they slip through and they're on stream. Um,
Yep.
and
And
it's
then
happened.
so going back to like the whole kind of like thing about that and self cheating and all that is like it's the easiest type of cheating to blah blah your way out of is if you get called out and you're like, oh, I made a mistake. It's very very easy, you know. It's like, oh, you shouldn't have moved him that far. You can't. I was a mistake. You know, it was game five. We were very stressed. You know, a lot of things going on. I was exhausted. You know, like bro, if you're gonna be fucking challenging to win a GT, you have to be able to endure playing 5 games in a row. I am sorry, but like if you want to win, you have to be able to take it. And I hate those excuses, you know, where it's like you call someone out being like, "Hey, you know, watch your game. You cheated a lot." And they're like, "Ah, it was all mistakes." You know. I'm like, "Well, if you're making that many mistakes, you probably shouldn't be winning an event." You know, like if you're claiming to be good at the game or trying to take the title of be good at the game by virtue of winning an event, you know, you probably should know your rules. And you probably should be quite careful with yourself. And that's what pisses me off the most is how easily when people are called out on it, that it's extremely easy in 40k to get away from the problem. You can just say, I made a mistake. I made several mistakes. Oh, I didn't check it. I was tired. I have realized my actions are wrong and I have reformed my behavior. is like the funniest one. That's like the easiest get out of jail free. That works for hard cheaters as well, by the way. So if you're out there being like, I want to hard cheat a tournament just to win, you can do that, and all you have to do afterwards is make a post on Reddit being like, I have reformed, and then you'll be accepted completely fine going forward. And that's like my biggest thing, which we'll get onto in a bit, is how to deal with cheating. But let's actually talk about why people cheat, because I think this is actually the most important thing about the cheating discussion to have. Oh, we've lost Brian again. But yeah, this is the most important thing to discuss in the actual cheating kind of conversation, because 40k is a game which is extremely hard to police. So having discussions about ways to punish or catch cheaters is good up to a point. But I think what we really need to do is talk about why people cheat, and can they be reformed? Can they be stopped from cheating? And just maybe understanding why it happens in the first place. Because I think there's a couple of reasons for it. But do you want to kick us off, Brian? Like, what is your opinion? Why do people cheat in 40k?
I mean, everybody wants to win. It's competition. Human nature too is very like obviously the term win at all costs, like those players, you see the term win at all costs. That's not something that you should be looked upon. You should look upon favorably those people that are out there doing anything it takes to win the game. But human nature naturally inclines us to be competitive and to want to win. Sometimes you can read a stratagem one way and your opponent can read it another way, but your brain is going to read it the way that's most beneficial to you. And that's not necessarily like being malicious with it. That's just human nature, is you always want the best outcome for yourself in a given situation. So I think that has a lot to do with why people act the way they do. Like you said, it's the entitlement. It's like, I need to win this game. I think I'm better than this person. In my brain, I think I'm better than this person. Therefore, every outcome should be going my way. And when it doesn't start going that way, I feel like their brain starts to panic and they'll try to course correct. And slowly it just builds and builds and builds and builds. And then you get to the point where, say you're a successful player and you have this whole career of doing really well behind you. Now you have to maintain that lie and you have to keep making up for it. You have to keep winning these games. And now when you start losing, your brain goes into panic mode because now your reputation's at stake. That's personally what I see. Is I see a lot of players that are too afraid to acknowledge mistakes and are too afraid to acknowledge defeats. And being able to be comfortable with that is how you really fight that human nature inside of you to just always want to win. Like, there's gonna be 200 people in a room for a GT. Only one person's walking out with the trophy. Being part of the 199 is not a bad thing at all. Like, that's perfectly normal and should be
Unless you go
expected.
2 and 3, in which case you should probably
Then
start Age of Sigmar. Like, what the fuck? Not going positive? Good God.
exactly. I mean, but
Yeah.
that's what I would be my guess.
I think that's actually the way you put that is so good. You almost went through like the arc of a cheater, where it's like start off as maybe taking advantage of someone, and I think that what we said there is regarding like taking advantage of someone who doesn't have the knowledge or maybe the confidence. That's like how most war gamers who become cheaters like start cheating, right? Like no one walks in and they're just like, yes, hello new player, Angron moves 40 and he's strength 60. Like everyone starts by like just taking a couple of extra dice out of the tray, moving a little bit too far, and then they, as you said, maybe build up a reputation which they feel like they have to maintain. Then get caught into like, it's basically like a feedback loop, right? They're caught in this cycle where they're like, and this is kind of my view on it. This isn't what I would say is like the only reason why people cheat, because I think there's an awful lot of different reasons as to why someone comes up and decides that they're going to cheat in a game of 40k. I think one of the most common one is an expectation of that they put on themselves and maybe the outcome of the game, and that they cheat in order to course correct it. I think it was actually in the Warhammer article they talked about this, but that they don't see cheating as like actually being wrong in this case. They're just like, well, I'm only doing this because I got a little bit unlucky in a previous turn, or my idiot newbie opponent got really lucky and now I've lost too much resource, which I shouldn't have. And they kind of self-justify it by basically being like, oh yeah, I'm just doing this to even the odds and make it, fairer, right? or fairer in their eyes. And I think that's like a pretty common one. But um, and this one is going to sound kind of bad, right? But I do think this is a factor as well. And a lot of the people I've played against who I have felt or who I know have cheated against me, I could probably attribute this to at least a good portion of them. But it's basically like um, a lot of it's to do with self worth and how you value yourself and what confidence you have in yourself, right? And this is going to sound like deep and whatever. And I guess in a way it is. It's like it's an unfortunate facet of the game, which I think does exist. But um, a lot of people put an awful lot of how they value themselves in how they do in a tournament, right? So, there's a portion of wargamers who don't have a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Maybe they're single people, maybe they're, don't have a lot of other hobbies, maybe don't have a large friend circle. And their social outlet is going to a tournament to play games, right? And maybe how they define their self worth and their value is how well they do at this event, right? Um, and those people, if they win and if they do well at an event, maybe they could completely have done that honestly. They now feel very valued. They feel like they have a lot of self worth because they're like, I won a tournament. That's awesome. This thing that I do, even though I don't do a whole lot, I did this thing very well. And then maybe they go to another couple of tournaments and they don't do as well. And they start to lose that sense of self worth. And then it kind of starts to slide into their mind by basically being like that thing where you just start by very soft cheating, maybe evening the scales in their mind, or just making sure that they can come away from that feeling like that they have achieved something because their sense of fulfillment, their sense of achievement comes from doing well at tournaments. And it's, I think that is a thing as well, which we have to talk about in the hobby. And I think that it's a difficult conversation to have because it involves topics around mental health, topics around, isolation and, social awkwardness and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not someone who's like qualified to talk about that, but I definitely think that a lot of people put too much of their own value into how they do at a tournament because at the end of the day, very few people actually kind of care who's like the top of X or the top of Y in 40k. I know it's like we all sort of care, but like, do we actually really care? Unless it's you who's at the very top, maybe you care then, and that's completely fair. But like, while I'm always like interested to see like who's the best world eater, is it going to be Brian? Is it going to be Ryan? I'm like, I like that race. I'm interested in it. But like, do I actually really like fundamentally care who's on the top at the end of the day? Not really, I'm not going to be like, oh, Brian, I'm not going to be like, oh, Ryan, we're no longer friends if you're not one world eater. I would absolutely do that for you, Brian, but that's different. So it's a difficult conversation. I want to know your thoughts on it, Brian.
I the self-worth aspect, yeah, I can get that quite a lot. Like I said, it's the from my experience with the time that I TO'd and what I've gone through the development arc of being a bad player to being fighting for the GT in every single GT win or fighting for the GT win in every single GT I go to. I've done that whole arc of going from the low tables to the mid tables to the high tables, and now I'm consistently at the high tables. I've seen it all, and the majority of the misplays and stuff that I see and like sketchy stuff, like you said, can come from those upper tables where it's people trying to maintain their self-worth and their image, mainly within the community. Like they want to be known as the best Tau player in the area or whatever. So the minute they start getting challenged, that's when you can see stuff like that start to come out. I see a few comments in here saying that like maybe we're too nice and that means you get taken advantage of. Not necessarily
Oh
though.
no, yeah, I see what Don's saying. I like in person, yeah, sure, like projecting here. But once I step up to the table, if I feel like someone's cheating me, I will straight up just be like, judge, like. Although actually, this is not that's a newer thing, and we'll talk about ways to get around that. But I mean, Don will remember he had to like police one of my games at the LGT, not LGT, LVO. But yeah, I think what you're saying about like reputation is a pretty big one as well because the kind of topic that I was saying about like self worth isn't necessarily like the be all and end all of it, because there are people. They may be content creators, they may be prolific members of the community, they may be people like us on the Red Path who have a sort of a small community, or they may be people who have a very large community that, for want of a better word, do have a reputation to uphold. Like, I don't feel like the community puts us under any pressure to achieve tournament success, but it sure is good to be seen as like leaders of the World Leaders community, right? When we come back and we're like, yep, quite a few of us do very well at events all the time. And that builds an expectation where people watch our videos because they're like, these guys are good at the game. They win events. And the opening is there that if that reputation starts to slide and you're a a slightly compromised individual, that you may feel that in order to uphold your reputation, you have to maybe do a little bit of soft cheating to even the scales, so to speak, because you've got your reputation. You've got to be good, right? Like, you've won events and everyone thinks you're really good. So it only makes sense that you take up 5 dice instead of 4 when you should have taken 4. And I think that's a factor too. And obviously that's not me being like every content creator except the Red Path are cheaters. While true, it's not what I'm saying.
I'm sure, like, if you go back, like, I have a ton of, there's a lot of me on the internet now playing 40K, and I think specifically, like, if you look at my first couple games, I'm a new player on stream. Like, I'm making mistakes, and I've even gone back and cringed at some of those mistakes, but it's okay. It didn't matter. My opponent was going to lose anyways, right, Dara? No, I actually got completely bodied in my first game on stream against now actually one of my good friends, Scott Ketchum. But like, there is a line you have to draw there between like mistakes, honest mistakes, and cheating. And some of the easiest ways to like tell on a stream, like I always try to be a very nice player. I'm a very nice player when I'm playing on stream, and I got like yelled at it by a lot of the members of the community after CTC, is that I was helping my opponent in round 5 and actually giving them advice on how to play against me, which is one of my character flaws. Like, I will genuinely like try to help my opponent make decisions so we can have a clean, honest game on top of maybe some mistakes that may be happening, but usually that's a way to tell like that mistakes versus cheating. Like, you can see if it's like rules for thee but not for me kind of a situation with like take backsies and stuff. Everything's got to kind of line up before you can actually call someone a cheater versus a mistake. So I was just like careful with witch hunting, guys. Like, that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, definitely don't be doing that. But
Because like, you'll see people that you like and that are good people on stream making mistakes. Please don't go burn their house down. Like,
yeah,
no, like Joe says on War Games Live, no game of 40K is perfect.
I think it can also be maybe an easy way to deflect the conversation, though. Sometimes it's just saying like no witch hunting. And like, we mean that. Like, don't go fucking chasing people down saying you're gonna kill them because they cheated in a game of 40K. But like, it can be very easy to shut a conversation online down about cheating. I know a lot of when these conversations started happening recently, the mods of Warhammer Competitive shut down a lot of the discussion threads very quickly because they hate discussions about cheating. You know, they hate that topic being brought up, and they will just shut it down immediately because witch hunting. You know,
because I mean, but you don't want like, I'd rather see a person who's getting accused of cheating that genuinely didn't. They are just making mistakes. I'd rather see that person not get harassed than I would love to see some like glorified cheaters get like nailed up.
mm.
Like, sure, yeah. Um, witch hunting is an easy excuse to hide behind, but it's like it's a
It
moral
can be very
gray area.
easy.
Like, you
Yeah.
don't want that weaponized and getting turned every single misplay on every stream. You don't want the person getting judged.
Mm. Yeah, no,
Um,
it's tough. Yeah, it's one of the other things which I think is becoming a little bit more prevalent now is general members of the community feeling, and this is another like reason to cheat, I guess, before we move on to ways to stop it. But um, people in the community, normal people who don't make content, see prolific players or content creators cheating regularly on live stream, and they suddenly gain this mindset of, well, if they can do it, so can I. And I think that's a significant issue at the minute where, X, Y, and Z player is playing on live stream. We're watching them. We're like, ah, they're cheating. Um, but some people will watch that and say, well, I've watched like 4 of their streams now, and they've cheated on all of them. So if they're doing it, like, why shouldn't I just do it as well? Maybe they're like, I want to get to the podium, and if that's what it takes to get to the podium, and not that I'm saying that that is what it does take, because that's not true, but people could construe that as being that's what it takes. Or maybe they have this person who they see as a role model in 40k at least, and they're like, well, if my role model's cheating, I might as well do it as well, because apparently there's not really consequences, so I can get away with it. And I think that a lot of people are seeing that there isn't really any distinct consequences for cheating in 40k right now. And that was fine like 10 years ago when 40k was like, 400 people. It was like the biggest tournament in the world. But we just had LGT and LVO's coming up, and those like top 1,000 people. And there's a lot of people on StatCheck's Elo playing competitive 40k right now, tens of thousands, in fact. And the game is getting pretty big, but while the game itself is very tight, very competitive in its current iteration, the padding around the game is not. There's like very little good support for TOs and for dealing with people who are not playing this game honestly. And I hate the perception of the gentleman's agreement in 40k, because it just doesn't actually exist anymore. Like, people are like, oh, it's a gentleman's game. You go up and you shake your opponent's hand. You have a very honest game of 40k. While true a lot of the time, also not true quite a significant amount of the time. And we as a community honestly need to move past that and just be like, cool, cheating's a big enough problem that we need pretty hardline rules for dealing with it. And we also need ways to, I don't want to say like rehabilitate, but it's a good word for it, is like prevent people from cheating, or reform people who have cheated and actually reform them. Not like, I made an Instagram post and now we're good. And I think we've talked about a bunch of ways, that reasons at least why people cheat, but what would you
We can
say? Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say we can kind of wrap into the like reforming a little bit towards the end, because I want to talk about how to actually just prevent it from the first place.
Cool, let's do that. Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
that.
because like the most important thing you can, and also will tie into how to get rid of the perceptions of yourself making mistakes and that potentially coming off as cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Number one thing I tell everyone is roll dice in a tray and make sure it's visible to your opponent. And I, on several occasions, have asked my opponents to actually roll where I can see it. And I'll preface it ahead of time, make sure it's done real nice and early in the game so that it's not necessarily an accusation. Make sure you're rolling your dice where your opponent can see it, and make sure you're asking your opponent to roll the dice. Make sure between each and every roll, if possible, there's like a verbal exchange of acknowledging what's exactly happening with the dice. Your strength is this, your toughness is this. Okay, you should be wounding on this. Do your wound roll. And it's that quick half-second conversation that you can have with your opponent, which can prevent those feels bads, prevent those dice from getting picked up. If you see something looks off, don't be afraid to ask questions. Say, how many attacks do you have? Because I know, like, usually when I charge people and attack them with like 8-bound, they're like, Jesus Christ, how many attacks is that? You usually think I'm lying, but no, it's the truth. Or my favorite one is, what strength are exalted 8-bound? And it's like 15, and they're like, oh my God, and like, and you have to actually pull it out and show them. Don't get offended when opponents ask to see your rules. And likewise, your opponent should not be getting offended when you're asking to see their rules to fact check them. Something seems off, just ask, make sure everything's transparent. And you yourself as a player, it is also your responsibility to, I mean, maybe I hold myself to this standard. I've actually like never blood surged into anyone without them knowing they were going to get blood surged into in their movement phase. Same thing with my stratagems. Like, I'm never going to be like, surprise, I have sticky objective. No, the beginning of every game, I'm just like, what are your gotchas? What are your strats? Here are my strats. Here are my gotchas. Look out for this. And usually I do the rule of everybody gets one, where it's like, even after I've told you about blood surge, if you're about to make an obviously dumb play, I'm still going to be like, don't do that. After that, that's kind of like player discretion. But being able to protect yourself from those gotchas, from those, oh, that strat's actually the wrong amount of CP that you told me. Can I see that? Like, don't be afraid to ask questions. And it should be socially acceptable too. If somebody says the charge is 7 inches and it looks like it's like 9, don't be afraid to pause the game, go over there and check. Like
You've got
that
a measuring
is,
tape too. Use that
yep.
tape. You know.
And it doesn't take long, not at all. It takes an extra few seconds. Don't worry about your clock. Making sure the game is played clean is more important than losing a minute off your clock throughout the game of just double checking a few things here and there. And if stuff's really sus, go take a bathroom break and talk to the judge on the way to the bathroom and have the judge come just take a look at the table.
Yep.
That's one of the strategies I employed quite a bit while I was TOing. And if I see something sus or I know specific play, because I like defending my local community from some of the bad apples too. So if I go into an event and I know a bad apple's in the room, I will typically go tee off the judge ahead of time too. And you don't want to make a public spectacle out of it because again, you don't want to be witch hunting. You don't know if genuine mistakes are happening or if there's something more malicious going on. So that's kind of like my 2 cents on like always be in control of the situation. It's always your responsibility to an extent to know your opponent's rules to as best as you can.
Yeah.
Like
I think it's tough. Like they're really good points. I think a lot of them ride on the fact that you yourself have to be confident enough to make those calls, and I think that's a really big problem in 40k is that people lack the confidence to say, "Fuck you, brother. I don't believe you." You know. I think both of us are definitely. I can speak for myself anyway, and I've seen you play on stream enough that we are totally fine with saying to our opponent, "Hey, show me your reels," or "Double check that measurement," or "I don't think that that is how it is." And that's like a pretty common line in 40k is like, "I don't think that's how it is." That's an easy way, non-confrontational way of questioning your opponent. Basically telling them to at least provide proof. And if they can't provide proof, you either go get a judge or you try and come to some sort of resolution. And
and
sorry, go on.
sorry, a good example of that I just want to talk about is like Blood Surge, for example. 10th edition has made it a lot of armies very parasitic off of each other, where some rules overlap quite a bit. Space Wolves have a Blood Surge. Curse Cultists have a Blood Surge. We have a Blood Surge. They all may have tiny variations between them. So one of the easy ways that you can like nonchalantly, like without being super confrontational, be like, oh, I thought Blood Surge works this way because it's like this for Space Wolves. Then you can start the conversation of your opponent pulling out the rules and showing you because you've like kind of padded yourself with like there's tons of examples in 10th edition of armies overlapping. Hypercrypt, GK, uppy downy rules, 3-inch deep strike. Like you can always use other armies as references to say, hey, can I see your rules? Because other armies do it differently than what you're saying. And for the most part, they tend to be pretty consistent. There's a few outliers here and there, but sorry, Dara, that I ran you over there. But like
No, you're
that's a
good.
good way to
It's a really good point. One thing that I want to say, and this is probably maybe my most important contribution, is that if you feel like you are being significantly cheated, you feel like your opponent is taking advantage of you, and maybe you're in a position where you are going to win the game anyway. Maybe you don't necessarily care that they are cheating you. Maybe you have resolved the situation and called them out on their bullshit and they have stopped doing it. It is your responsibility, and this is like you, the person who has been cheated, it is your responsibility to inform a judge that that happened, because the buck stops with you. When they're going to go on to their next game, if the judge is not aware of the fact that this player is a problem, if the next opponent flags them as a problem, that will be the first time they have been flagged. If
especially
you
because if
have
you're
let them
winning that
know,
game,
yeah,
yeah, if you're winning that game, now that person's losing and they're in the losers bracket where they're much more likely to play against a Timmy who's playing his fresh out of the box Leviathan army and he's going to have a horrible time.
yeah. So it is absolutely you as the aggrieved party. It is your responsibility to make sure that someone else in the room does not suffer the same way, or if they do, that actual action can be taken. And this maybe actually kind of swerves into the next point, which is like penalization for cheating in 40k. Because it takes a fucking lot of work to actually get a yellow card in 40k these days. But one of the ways that it can happen is even if you have been aggrieved by a cheater, to let the TO know so that they can either issue a warning or at least be on alert for if there is another infringement. Because typically in 40k, it's like you got to do multiple things wrong before you get a yellow card. And then you got to keep doing shit wrong before you get a red card. And even then, I've been to some events where there's 3 yellows before a red, which is like you basically have to, at some point, accumulate a bunch of yellow cards and then assault your opponent before you're actually going to be kicked out of that event. It's like fucking tough. TOs don't want to deal with that confrontation of booting someone out of an event. And I'm like, man, can we just fucking man up and like actually just get over this thing of it being a gentleman's hobby where everyone is going to shake and hug at the end of the
And
game? Is not going to happen, you know?
and the
Like,
only way that you're truly accumulating that many yellow cards in a row is if you're refusing to also own your mistakes. Say you're not intending to cheat whatsoever and you're playing Thousand Suns for the first time ever and you signed up for LVO, right? Like you're gonna be an absolute train wreck of a player going into that event.
you're going to be the
Own it.
worst
If
opponent, but you won't know about it.
you're going to look like if you're gonna be that guy and you're going to be making that many mistakes, don't be afraid to just own it, and then people will think nothing of it. If you make a mistake, acknowledge your mistake. Say, hey, I messed up this outcome. Let's reverse this and give your opponent some leeway and make it so that like you're truly owning it. Those people that are hoarding 4 yellow cards and are still like looking at the Tacoma Open, somehow ending up in the finals of the Open after having 4 yellow cards. This is a dead issue, by the way. The guy's come out and made his Reddit post saying that he's changed as a
Reformed.
human being,
Yeah. Yeah.
reformed.
The keyword
The fact
reformed
that they
is actually
made it that
probably the
far,
strongest like keyword in 40k right now.
if personally, if I'm getting yellow carded in a game, I am probably conceding that game. I'm probably going to look at my opponent and say, let's keep playing this game. I've lost. Whatever the outcome is, we'll figure out what's the correct
Dude, I
outcome.
think if I got yellowed at an event, I'd probably drop. I would be
Like,
so embarrassed.
I mean, just because think about how much it takes to actually get yellow carded. Like, what'd you do?
Yeah.
Like, trip the dude on the way to the bathroom and like punch his model off the table? And you're like,
Like,
my
if I did
bad.
it to like you, if I tripped you at an event that we were playing at and a TO saw and gave me a yellow card, I'd probably own that one. But like any other
Oh,
time,
at that
I
point,
might
I'd
be
make it a speed run goal to get a yellow card myself back just to make it even.
Yeah, it's that's probably the most frustrating thing. I think it's a byproduct of a few different things. Is like TOs don't like confrontation. As a TO myself, I love a little bit of confrontation. It's kind of fucking spicy. You know, you're bored. You're sitting around for the rest of the day. What else are you gonna do?
Yeah, I've just been paint judging for an hour
Yeah,
and a half. Give me
it's
some spice. Somebody start something.
they're afraid of confrontation. A not insignificant amount of time they are friends or know the person who is involved, especially if it's a high level player, and will be much quicker to excuse them. They will say it was a mistake. The TO will say, of course it is. We are friends. They will say it didn't impact the game, and the TO will say, I don't need to know anymore. Of course it didn't impact the game. These are things that I have seen happen. Things that I have actually like been a victim of sometimes, and like it's there's too much of a Venn diagram crossover between like TOs, high profile players, and them like merging together. Where the high profile players are like, now I can get away with shit because I'm going to an event and Brian's running it. So what's Brian gonna do? Give me a yellow card? Brian's gonna feel real fucking awkward about that. So I can probably push my luck a little bit more at this event.
I'd red card you just for like misspeaking to me
Okay,
once.
but like for real though,
But
if I was
yes,
at an
yes.
event that you were running and I did something that warranted a yellow card, how awkward would that make you feel?
Yeah, I'd be put on the spot because I'd want to defend you
Yeah. And if
inherently.
I came up to you and I said, "Hey man, look, I know this technically warrants a yellow card, but I really did make an honest mistake," you'd probably believe me.
Probably.
Yep. And I think that happens a fair bit. So the system that we currently have, and there isn't actually like a system, there isn't a universal one, which is
It's just
a really big part of the problem, is that we don't have a international group of TOs, or at least we don't have one that is recognized enough by enough events. That like we don't have this group like FIFA or I don't know any other sport. Brian, give me something, please.
baseball.
Baseball is not international.
Oh, American football.
Also not international. You know what? I know America's the world, but you look at FIFA, right? They are responsible for a lot of football across the world, and they make a set of rules which is widely adopted by most football leagues. 40k does not have that. 40k has like UKTC, WTC, GW, ITC, a lot of different groups, all of which have different sportsmanship stuff. And then you get into the independent events, like the one that I ran pretty recently, which had a relatively aggressive series of penalties where it was like pretty much no chill. You could get red carded straight away if you did something bad enough to warrant a red card. You could get yellow carded without a warning. And that goes across like basically the entire world. A lot of people have a lot of different ideas about how sportsmanship should be implemented. But in my opinion, number one, TOs should be a little bit firmer in terms of actually cracking down on people. Um, Number two, we should have some sort of tracking system where, say, you go onto best goals pairings, you look at your opponents, and there's like a little yellow card under their name, which means they either got a yellow card in this event or in a previous one.
Or at
Not,
least the TO should be able to see that if it's
yeah, sure. I actually think the players should be able to as well because they should know going into a game that
well,
they are potentially playing someone who is problematic.
so we've had just quick anecdote with that. We had in my GT a player who has been banned from 4 different LGSs for, and it takes a lot to get banned from a venue. Like just getting yellow carded, red carded, that may get you a 0 for the game, for the round, or an ejection from the event, but being told you can never come back, usually you got to really work your way up to something like that, though. But imagine getting paired into somebody that you don't know, or that you now have been tipped off has been banned from several events. You're gonna go with into that game with a mindset already angry, right? You're gonna be looking for an excuse to bury that person, right? Like
Not necessarily. No, I don't think
they
so.
they get you once and now you're just gonna be mad. I feel like that would I've seen this happen several
Okay,
times, like
so
with this person. So it's as the TOs, we just kept a closer eye on the game, and I feel like that's something that's better in that circle
no,
than
I
just because,
completely disagree
but then you
because
just get the
you're
witch hunting
putting
again.
it's not witch hunting. You're putting all the responsibility of the game being played well on the person who you already know is a problem because the person that they're playing does not necessarily know and more than likely does not know that the person they're walking up against is a problematic player. I'm talking about like you should only give this to people who have gotten yellow cards, which as we've already gone through is like a challenge in itself to get to that yellow. So like you have a situation where two people are walking up to a table. You look at your opponent's name on BCP, doesn't say anything. Cool, could be anyone, doesn't matter. We're going to walk up. It is assumed that the person across from you is going to play the game to the same moral high ground as you, the person, right? Um, if you have a situation as a TO where you have someone who has been yellow carded at your event or yellow carded at like the previous one, I don't think the yellow card should like linger forever. I think it should be maybe like a 3 month period or a year long period or something. But like you as the TO have made the decision that you are going to give the responsibility for that game being played well and fairly to the person who you know is already a problem player. Because the person that they're going up against has no idea that they're problematic. And they're walking into that game assuming that their opponent is going to play the game to the same standard that they're going to play it. However, vast majority of the time, if they're a problematic player, they're going to not play it to that standard. And their opponent is going to feel pretty shit if they catch it out at the end of the game. And maybe they come up to the TO and they say, hey, I want to complain this player. And you as the TO are like, well, that person just had a shit 3 hours and it's entirely on me because they walked into a game that they did not know what they were going to experience. Now, if they go into the game and they see that the player has been flagged, they will at least have an expectation and they will know to be on the lookout for something. And at the very least, they will be watching to make sure that the game is played a little bit more fairly because they won't be willing to give them as much slack.
Sure,
They will say, like, hey, you've been flagged as a problem player. What you're doing right now is not correct.
sure. And I
Stop
guess
that.
this will probably flow into our last point, like once we get there, about like redemption too, like past to redemption and stuff. The last thing I want is people getting bullied and black sheeped, right? And yes, I know you as a player, you can walk up to a table and you can see somebody with a little icon next to their name. And I know that probably won't change your overall behavior in terms of like you as a person. You're still going to try to have a good game. But saying that for the general community, I feel like can be a bit of a stretch. So
Yeah,
I'm just
it's tough.
I don't want players. I don't want it to be a self-fulfilling thing too, where the player has turned a new leaf,
This is the
is
problem,
deciding to
right?
be
Yeah,
better,
yeah.
and then they accidentally move their guy 6.5 inches instead of 6 inches, and the player across the table from them has a fit,
We
right?
have
Like
already
that.
established it's very easy to not move your guy more. You
It,
just check
and
the funny number.
yes, Don, there are some people out there who have demonstrated on multiple times they will cheat
Yeah.
every time the judge turns their back. But like I said earlier with the witch hunting, I would rather like one person actually like be given the benefit of the doubt, redeem themselves, actually clear themselves as a cheater. I would rather have that person be able to have the opportunity to exist. I would take a couple cheaters in the pool for the opportunity for some people to redeem themselves, if that makes sense. At the end of the day, like it's your personal relationship with the game, and we're not going to be able to change who you are. You're not going to be able to
Okay.
change like
I'm
I
gonna say
know
this,
like
right?
the TOs can start banning people from events before they show up, and there can actually be a formal punishment system. But I
Ooh,
think
formal
everybody should get a
punishment
second.
system. That sounds fun. That sounds a bit
Like your
kinky. I
models get
like that.
broken. We keep your models. But
Also, Aiden is here and Tebow is here. Tebow is one of the boys from No Retreat. He was really fun. What's he saying? Even in gaming, coming from semi-pro trading card games, international events are run by the same corpus of judges and rules, and you have a player's number that tracks everything you do. That's what I'm talking about. If we had that system, it would be so good.
yes, but
Aiden did say that he cheated on a live stream at the LGT, and he feels ashamed of himself. Well, I'm
you ready
glad
to
that we're
start
like,
we can
okay,
start a fire now.
yeah, chat.
At the
You wanted the witch.
get them.
So okay, going back to what
But
you said there, right? Because I don't disagree with you. I think that situation could happen, right? But if you are the player who has cheated and you have genuinely reformed yourself, and there is a tracking system which shows your opponent that yes, you were yellow carded in the last 6 months or whatever the time period is, doesn't fucking matter. But it just shows that that did happen, right? You as the reformed player, knowing that that is a thing, will go up to the table and surely you have that conversation with your opponent. If you have genuinely reformed, you say, "Hey man, I know you
and
probably saw on BCP that I have a yellow card. Allow me to explain myself."
and I'm not going to call the person out, but I've actually played against a very famous cheater, one that did get burned at the stake, did come out and make apologies. I played against them at one of my major events in the past, and actually they started the conversation of the event or of the game. They said, "Hey, I have this reputation. This is what I did. I was an ass. Please feel free to call me out at any point during this game."
And that's all you have to do, right? So if you have this card system,
The game
whereas
was mostly clean
before,
after that too. Like,
yeah. So before, where I was kind of saying, like, if the card flagging isn't there, the responsibility is on the cheater to basically take the game into their own hands. It's still their responsibility if the flagging system is there, but they have an opportunity if they are reformed or reforming to explain themselves, right? And I think, in my opinion, I know it's like, it sounds dramatic. It really does to sound dramatic to like flag someone like that, right? But it means that it actually gives people the opportunity to have the discussion about their reformation, about how they're improving. And by having that discussion and talking to other people about it, they themselves will actually improve as people and as players who are honest at the game because they'll be having that discussion on a regular. And like at a certain point, if you are a cheater, you can't just keep lying. Like at some point, it's gonna start feeling fucking hollow, and you're gonna feel really bad about it. So if you're coming up to every game and you honestly want to change, it is gonna help if you have that conversation every single time. And you know what's also gonna help if you are reforming, and at the end of the game, that person says, "Hey, I know you said you were reforming. I had a really good game against you, man. Thank you very much." You know, that's gonna help. You know. And if you're just someone who's like reforming their ways and no one knows about it and you're just doing it quietly by yourself and you're not getting that positive affirmation that what you're doing is working, it's going to be way harder. So, in my mind, and this sounds like, again, pretty dramatic, the only way that I see the like flagging system as being bad is for cheaters who either don't want to reform, say they want to reform and lie about it, or just don't give a shit and keep on cheating, right? I don't actually see how, as long as you approach the game correctly as the flagged player, and honestly, as the person who is playing into a flagged player as well, to not go in with an immediate assumption that you are going to have a bad game. I actually think it could be really healthy for the game, and it could help people break bad habits. But
And
it's also pretty extreme. So I don't know. What
well,
does chat think?
I used to play Tau, then I got here. I'm better.
I don't know.
Ta
Yeah, that leaves a mark.
Does playing 10th edition launch Eldar count as cheating?
Yes. But what do you think about that anyway, Brian? I know you kind of aired some ideas, but given what I just said, does it change your opinion, or are you still kind of like it
No,
seems like a bad idea?
I agree though. Like, you, definitely as a cheater, if at a certain point it's like, what is this all for? Like, do you actually feel like you earned that win? And that plays into like coming home from that event. And that plays into what I was saying earlier about like the blood surge talk, or saying like I usually always tell my opponents that they're about to get blood surged into when they forget they're about to get blood surged into. Because if I win from them getting blood surged because they didn't remember one of my many rules, my win's gonna feel kinda hollow. And I take that personally, winning games sometimes when it doesn't feel deserved. Like sometimes I look my opponent in the face and I'm gonna say, I'm sorry, Angron revived 3 times. This shouldn't happen, right? But it has happened. And that does feel kind of like it takes a bit of that away. And I feel like that even gets like doubled or tripled if you're a cheater, right? Like that trophy you have, every time you look at that trophy, you're going to be reminded of what you did to get that trophy. No
So
one else
it
knows but you.
depends. It depends though.
I,
What if
I,
you're the kind of
it's just
person who's like, I cheated to even those scales. I deserve this trophy because I am being vilified by the community who's telling me I'm a good
then
player.
there's no redemption for some of those people, and they need a red flag next to their name.
Okay,
I
let's
do
talk
agree
about
that's
that, right?
I do agree that some people cannot change. That
Yes.
is just true. There are dirty, rotten cheaters out there that will do it every single time. It's just me as a person, I tend to give the benefit of the doubt because more often than not, I want the community to improve.
So I'm pretty sure there isn't a single person in the entire world who is like fully banned from playing 40k competitively. I don't think there's a
No, and
single
there
one.
should be.
There
Sometimes,
should
like I
be,
said,
but
I'm in
there
favor of the
isn't.
community getting better, and sometimes the community is better without certain people.
Yep. But there are people who are banned from certain circuits. There are people who have been banned and are now back. There are people who are banned from local stores. But
Some of the
because we
stories
don't
I've
have an international framework for keeping track of this stuff, for making a kind of data set and making a rule set for how to deal with this sort of stuff, me, hyper toxic Irish boy, banned from all events in Ireland, flies to the UKTC. Who's gonna know? You know, it's very easy to get around it, and just depends how bad you want it. And I feel like if you're the kind of person who actually does go out and get banned from events or locations, you probably want it bad enough that you're just gonna go somewhere else. Or maybe you have a moment where you're like, "Holy shit, what am I doing?" You know, like. And at the end of the game, or at the end of the day, that's like what weirds me out the most. We're playing 40k. Like, what's on the line? You know, you can't win money from this hobby. You can barely make money from this hobby. Why are you cheating? Like,
this is a net negative hobby in terms of
yeah,
money. I
it's
don't
it's
make money. I
super
spend
weird.
$1,000 to get an army together and painted, and then I spend $70 on an entry fee where I get a $140 combat patrol at the end of it. And I'm just like, yes.
Profit, baby. It's
And
weird. It's just weird to me. Like, you
I,
know,
I and like to reiterate, guys, like we don't want to be making this sound like it's a bigger deal than it is. Yes, it is a huge deal, but that doesn't mean you should be going into your next tournament just staring holes in your opponent. Like
do stare
like
the holes,
Dara
but
and I
don't just
said,
call them a cheater.
yes, well, okay. Well, like we said, 10% of the room soft cheats.
Yeah,
Maybe 2 tables hard cheat. That it should be
I think
your
you should
like
go around and you should like have a notepad out, finish your game early, just ram Angron in. What you do is you move further than you actually can, and you roll a few more dice than you actually can, so your game finishes early. Then you go around with a notepad, you observe all
cheat
the
so
other
you can
games.
find the cheaters.
Cheat so you can find the cheaters. You heard it here on the Red Path
And
first.
and I do have a couple funny anecdotes that I can share too, which is like if you want to be like the Batman of your group, like what the hero that you don't deserve, but the hero or the hero that you need, whatever that phrase is.
You are butchering that.
But whatever. There's a guy in our local group, who when like playing in team events when told that there is a cheater on the other team, he will intentionally try to pair into the other person and just troll them relentlessly. And
Yeah, I
I'm
love that.
not going to
That's
tell
so
you that
good.
this is the way to do it. In fact, I'd say it's not what you want to do. But like one of the examples is people moving too far, right? Space Marine that's moving 8 inches. Specifically an event, he raised his hand and called Judge immediately. And he's like, hey, Judge, my opponent just moved this Space Marine 8 to 10 inches. It should move 6. But the model's already moved, so what can the TO do? So the TO just says, 4 up, roll a die. On a 4 up, it moves back 4 inches, right? And that was the TO's solution. The dude rolls a 4 up, he makes the 4 up, so his Space Marines do get to move the full 10 inches. He's been called out for cheating. Nothing's been done. The TO's left because he has to go deal with another judge call. So this player in our group then proceeds to look his opponent in the face, pick his Leman Russ up, and move it 4 feet across the board and put it down during his opponent's turn. And his opponent's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "You want to roll a 4 up? Like we can keep it there if we roll a 4 up."
I love
That's
it.
what the TO's gonna say.
Yeah.
So like, that's just like a little funny anecdote. Don't do that, guys. That will get you in a fight and get confrontations. Like, but I don't know. Thought it was funny.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on about stories, and I think it's fair to say it's a good thing to point out that like the vast majority of you and me play a fucking lot of tournaments. I mean, we go to on average what roughly a tournament a month, I would say.
I I would have 3 GTs this month if a
Yeah,
hurricane didn't stop one.
and like I can probably count on one hand the amount of players that I think are cheaters after having played maybe 50 to 60 tournament games every year. I can probably count on one hand. So that kind of does actually make sense. So you play 50 games, 5 people, 10%. I need to find the 10%. But it's really uncommon. It doesn't
Also,
really happen.
original username, what you just said there, that would if I was a TO, they're not in my event anymore.
Yeah,
They're
I
gone.
mean, anyone who fucks with dice, like actually fucks with dice, they gone. Like
You
they
gotta
are
ask
really,
why did they mark the dice? They
yeah.
have no good answer. There's no good answer for that,
No,
and you're
there
out of my
isn't.
event. That's
No.
just like thanks for giving me the evidence to kick you out. This was not a mistake.
But broadly speaking, cheating is not common. However, just because it's not common, this is the thing, right? There's a lot of parroted arguments around why we shouldn't talk about cheating and why we shouldn't deal with it. Number one is cheating is not common. True, that doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it because cheating does still happen and is becoming more common. I've played this game competitively since 8th edition. Since I started playing in 8th edition, there are a lot more people who cheat than there was back then. This is about 6 years ago. 6 years timeline, I would say cheating has gone up from about 1% to about 5%. So it is on the rise. The game is getting bigger. People feel like they can cheat easier. We should still talk about it. Yes, it's not common. Yes, the 95% are still amazing people to play against. However, we have to have a discussion. Number two is when you talk to someone and they say, no one ever cheats in our group. And you talk to maybe a group of people. I don't want to name names. There is a certain group or a certain circuit which is basically like we are the image of sportsmanship. We are the best players. Everyone says this is all very lovely and everyone has a great time. All you're doing is like doing the Barack Obama meme where you put the medal on yourself. Like if I went out and me and all the boys from our local club rocked up and we all just said we are all brilliant sports. We are the best people to play against. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, who's measuring that other than you? So I hate it when people come out and they're like, oh yeah, like this thing, this is like the peak sportsmanship. I'm like, the best person to judge that is your opponents. Or the people who do not go to your thing or have like fringe involvement in it. So that's another thing where people like very easily are just like, we don't need to talk about that because we're all very, very good sports. Third thing is like high profile cases just being brushed under the rug because they are high profile cases. Like there are a lot of like serial cheaters. There are a lot of cheaters that have been caught on camera. There are a lot of like soft cheaters who are still playing the game, still competing at the highest possible level, who are still making content on certain platforms. These are all things that are happening right now and no one's fucking talking about it. And obviously we're not going to name names because we're not fucking like weird like that. We're not going to witch on people. But like there are groups that are known within the community as people who cheat. I've had people come up to me at events and be like, "Hey, do you know X person cheats?" I'm like, "Yes, I know. We talk about this." And like, these are people who don't know me, you know, and they're just like, "Oh, I know you, Mr. Red Path. You talk about like being good and fair at the game. Have you known about this thing?" And I'm like, "Yes, most people know about these things." And like, it's super like it's weird. It's like a taboo, right? Like everyone's kind of just like, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that because like I'll get in trouble." Um, or it'll start drama, and I don't want to start drama. And like that's fair. You don't want to necessarily be at the center of something, but like it makes it very easy for people to decide that they themselves can cheat and get away with it when they see that all this other stuff is happening. So it all deflects conversation away from the problem when you have very high profile players who can basically influence maybe a community or a group of other players to basically shift a conversation that's happening online or elsewhere away from the topic because they don't like it or they don't necessarily feel comfortable having that aspect of their playstyle addressed. And the result of it is basically that cheating as a whole has actually become what I think is kind of like a taboo subject to talk about in the community. Like you see it with like threads being deleted on Reddit, you see it with conversations being shut down very quickly in Discord. I mean, like, I'll be the first to say it. If like we see people in our Discord regularly being like, X person is a cheater and everyone dogpiling on them, we'll tell them to stop doing that. It's like it's actually very difficult to have this conversation, and even I feel like by doing this live stream, I'm already like, are we putting a fucking red X on our back? But like, ultimately, I
That's
also don't really care because like the whole point of the red path is like, yes, we do world leaders, but also we want to be good opponents and good players at the game.
and
But yeah,
I was
I
about
don't know.
to just say that. Like I've only recently joined the Red Path. I mean, when did I join? Like 8 months ago,
Yeah,
7 months ago, something like that. That was one of the main things that attracted me to this channel is we are not here to market anything. We are just a cool group of dudes that want the best for the community. Um, I don't mind calling stuff out. I don't mind being blunt and honest because GW is not paying us. Like we're just a cool group of dudes, and at the end of the day, what we want more than anything else is to just share our love and passion for this hobby. And like I said earlier, the community does have a lot of cheaters in it. Just be careful with witch hunting. People make mistakes. I've made mistakes.
Yeah,
But at the
don't
same time,
fall
don't
like
forgive. Don't be too easy to forgive. And, maybe that's a personal flaw for me.
be fair,
But
be honest to yourself and to your opponent and to other people on the internet. Be fair and be honest, and I think those are
and,
the two most important things.
and own your mistakes is the most important thing. Like if you mess up, own it in the moment, and it won't blow up any further than that.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting conversation. Probably like most people would not know, but like when I started playing the game competitively, I was very prone to tilting, and like I was like on the border of falling into that pit of like, do I get over this tilt by like nudgy nudge, you know? Um, and when I had that moment where I was like considering doing that in a game at a tournament where I was just like getting really fucking tilted because 8th edition was pretty toxic, and I like stepped away to think about it by being like, okay, like you actually did just consider like cheating at the game to like get over your tilts because it was like I was saying, I was like, oh, it's not fair that all this stuff is happening. Maybe I do this thing. Anyway, I had that conversation with myself in my head. Um, and that was like a real big wake up call for me where I was like, holy shit, I like very easily started falling down this pathway over the course of a couple of months and like very easily could have kept going. And if I didn't like step away to just like cool down for like 1 minute, then I wouldn't have like maybe had that realization and probably would have continued down that pathway and realistically also probably wouldn't be here right now because I by that point 6 years ago I would have probably like developed into like pretty toxic player. Um
Like
but
you aren't.
well, okay, more toxic. Um, having that moment of like realizing like fuck, what am I about to do here was like pretty important, and I can definitely see and sympathize with people who've fallen into that like death spiral of cheating, where it's kind of like I am in so deep now I can't fucking get out. But you totally can. Like, not that I was in deep, or not that I was even like in it, but you can have a moment of realization, and maybe it's like you watching this video, and or maybe it's you reading an article and realize like they are talking about me, and this is not good. you can have that realization at any point and change your ways. There are, as we said, high profile people who've been caught on live stream and have genuinely reformed. It can totally, absolutely happen. And people will use you as like a model story of like, yes, it can get better and you can be a force for good in the community. And like, all it takes is having an honest conversation with yourself, which is what I did in that like couple of minutes where I was like, number one, why am I so fucking angry about this game? And number two, why do I care enough that like I would consider doing this to my opponent? Like at the end of the day, the outcome of the game is then fake. And since then, since that moment, I can like really distinctly remember that moment. I literally just don't really care about like winning or losing in 40k. I just care about like having a really good time. And like obviously it's gone on to like be really good. You know, anyone who's watched saw that I won like the best players player at No Retreat and like other sportsmanship stuff. And in our small community here, everyone like has a meme joke where they're like, "Oh, Dara's like the soundest man," which is like a nice person in an Irish way of saying it. But it doesn't take much to just realize that like you don't need to cheat at this game to get enjoyment out of it, and you also don't need to win to get enjoyment out of it. And at the end of the day, even if you do go 3-2, no one's really gonna fucking care other than yourself. I mean, you're gonna care. The numbers are gonna care. That tabletop battles app, that's gonna care when it pushes you down if you go 2-3. But being real, like, you're actually going to come out of the event happier and more fulfilled and actually feel like you had a better time if you just play the game honestly. Take the result that it's the game is meant to be. Like, there's no like god of 40k being like the game should be fair. The game has to be played this way. It's like the game is the game. If you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. Maybe you're unlucky. Maybe you're outplayed. But like, I'm rambling now. But I'm what I'm basically trying to say is like, if you are someone who does cheat, if you are someone who's fallen down that path, number one, know that you can get out of it, and number two, know that if you do get out of it, people will move on from that like identity of you as a cheater. Like they will accept you as having reformed.
There's always a new witch to hunt.
There's always a new witch. If you reform, I'll start cheating. I'll take that. I'll fall on that sword, maybe.
What do you mean start?
But yeah, look, I guess what I'm kind of trying to say is like, if you are watching this and you feel like maybe called out or something, know that like there is an avenue at least where you can like redeem yourself. I don't like mean to like demean anyone by saying it, but just like please don't fucking cheat at this game. There's no stakes. Like it's not real. We're not playing for big money. We're not playing for fame. We're just playing to have a good time. The vast majority of people who play at these events are just people who want to play 5 games and have fun and drink some beers. Like, I know the community is sort of seen as like self-policing, and that's not really working right now, but like we actually can self-police. Like we could do it if we wanted to, but the game is getting big and we need some sort of organization, and we need to be better as a community. We need to be a lot more comfortable having this conversation, and instead of just having the conversation and leaving it at that, to actually like making meaningful change. You know, like if you've heard this and you're someone who gets cheated against, maybe you know what to do now. If you're somebody who cheats, maybe you feel like you want to reform. If you're a TO, maybe you'll consider revamping your system for penalizing cheaters. Like, can we please just actually not just talk for once? Can we actually like do something with this information? But that is my like soapbox. I'm going to step down.
Oh, you're good. I mean, I think we've just about wrapped up everything we can talk about the subject. Like Dara said, just don't cheat. And I honestly think the best next step for the Warhammer community in general is like I would personally like to see BCP at a minimum like integrate like red card, yellow carding, and maybe only keep it at the judge level for now, where the judges can see that ahead of time. That would be like the next step I'd like to see implemented. I'm fine with that.
What should happen is that every judge should keep a can of Uriel yellow and Mephiston red. And whenever someone gets a yellow card or red card, they body blast them with the spray can.
A little paintball from across the room.
Yeah, paintball them.
From across the room.
There's just a guy with like one of those like paintball sniper like guns just like in the rafters.
A guy with a
Just waiting for
walkie-talkie,
the
just like
call.
table 37. His marine just moved an extra 2 inches.
Gonna take him down.
Take him out. A
Well,
yellow
yeah,
paintball just nails him in the chest. Yeah, that I'm actually more okay with that.
this has been like such a dramatic way to reintroduce chill game learn. Before we actually like finish up, um, if anyone in chat who's still here wants to ask us a question about what we've been discussing or kind of bring something up to close it out, we will do a little bit of a Q&A now. Obviously super chats will get priority if there's a lot of questions, but just fire anything in, we'll get to what we can. But I guess to close it out on a bit of a happier note, we both have a lot of events coming up, and it's gonna be pretty exciting. Hopefully we won't cheat. Hopefully we won't get cheated against. And yeah, I think it's pretty fun. Still love the game, but feel like there is room for growth, and where there is room for growth, there is room for discussion. We shouldn't feel bad about discussing it. And I'm actually very glad that we did talk about this. I don't know about you, Brian. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it changed. This conversation was good. I mean, like I already have kind of like I've already gone through the cycle of going up and down all the tables and becoming a TO and getting to hear your thoughts on like your own interpretations of that probably helps me for the next time I TO and how to handle situations. So yeah, I enjoyed this conversation and yeah, there are some skeletons in closets that need to get addressed.
Yeah. And I
And
think on the flip side of it as well, like there's a certain amount of the community that also needs to reality check themselves and not be too dramatic when it comes to dealing with cheaters. I will actually like hold up my hand. I have very, very strong opinions, like emotionally influenced opinions about cheating in this game. I really hate it, like passionately hate it. I feel very, very strongly about it. So when it comes to like this type of discussion, I will get like pretty heated if it's not like in the as we're doing it as a live stream right now. I will get like quite extreme. I know that like some of the suggestions I said could be construed as extreme, and yeah, to an extent they are, but like people can feel very strongly about this subject. And it is important to kind of like temper it and bring it into a reasonable frame where it's like number one, something that can actually be done about it, and then number two, something that's not going to actually like be harmful to any individual, because at the end of the day it's still a game of toy soldiers. Like we shouldn't really be like causing people significant emotional distress or like anything like that because of it. So yeah, I don't know, let's hop into chat. Rin, did either of you learn something from each other and or the chat? I learned that Aiden cheated at the London Grand Tournament, and as someone who has collaborated with Aiden, number one, I now feel vilified to cheat myself, because if he can do it, so can I. And number two, I feel like I should cheat, because if he's going to cheat to get a significant advantage on me, I will have to also cheat to make sure that that advantage is panned out. So that's my main takeaway from this video. But also that I think my main takeaway is actually that Brian was very good at like tempering me in this stream to not go over the edge, because I will and have done before when it comes to this discussion. And I think Brian made a lot of very reasonable and actually sensible points, whereas I am sort of like, let's bring out the guillotine, people, let's do it.
see, where Dara's ready to witch hunt, like I think Dara and I have actually had a conversation ourselves where myself, like I judge myself quite a bit after events to see like, because I'll typically go watch my stream games and I'm like, oh shit, did I do this wrong? And I think there was one specific instance, I won't bring it up, where I was messaging Dara back and forth. Like I was in the weeds being a detective on myself, seeing if I actually genuinely made a misplay that would warp the game's outcome. Because I was so worried that I may have screwed somebody over. Turns out it wasn't, but like as Dara's fast as Dara is to ready to burn somebody at the stake, I'm also sitting here ready to burn myself at the stake
Oh,
too.
I was
Like,
ready to crucify you. I was like, finally, we've got a way of getting Brian off the channel, and then I just couldn't find it, so I was like, ah, fuck. Alrighty. So original
Dara's four.
username. Sorry, what were you saying?
It was Dara's 4+ cheat strategy. What is that?
That's true. I'm gonna go through them from the top. So original username says, "What do you need to do if you witness cheating?" Like was said earlier, if the cheating event already happened, how do you prove that there was foul play? What do TOs look for, want to see as proof? It's very difficult. So coming from like all sides of this, where like being a TO and being a player, the obvious and best thing to do is to immediately call a TO. You as the TO can immediately adjudicate the situation. Obviously, that doesn't happen, and I would actually say it's really common for someone to realize after a game, or someone to actually get the confidence after a game to approach a judge. In those situations, it very much is about the context, like what actually happened. If you go up to someone and you say, "Oh yeah, I was playing against my opponent, and like they picked up more dice than they should have during our game," the TO can't actually do anything about this because like they have no idea. What you can do instead, and what you should do as the player, is approach the TO and say, "Hey, I know it's too late to do anything about it from my game. However, I had some problems with my last round opponent. I noticed that they were doing these things. I don't necessarily want action taken on them right now because I understand that it's his word against mine. However, I would suggest that maybe you keep an eye on them for the next game, or just be aware that I had a problem with them. So if someone else does, or if someone else already did, that you're aware of it." That's the
So
best thing you can do as a player.
for the love of God, guys, this is my biggest pet peeve, and it probably has nothing to do with the situation, but I've seen so many dice. I mean, it has a little bit to do with it. I've seen so many issues with people picking up too many dice because they roll in a dice tray that already has dice in it. Don't do that.
Just pick up the fucking dice before you
It's my
roll.
biggest pet peeve. Or
Yeah,
no, they'll keep like 50 dice off to the side in the tray, then roll in the other, then they all bounce around, and I was
yeah,
like, it probably doesn't. Yeah,
yeah.
suddenly there's like 3 or 4 extra dice sneaking in, and the player's obviously not doing it intentionally, but just don't roll in the same die. I'm sorry, pet peeve triggered.
Don has a very pertinent question. He wants to know, did I bring the gene seed? And as anyone who has played Space Marine with me recently knows, that I fucking love the gene seed.
Gotta do the dance.
I have do the fucking Codex approved dance. I don't have the gene seed, unfortunately, but I might
We're
play
still
some.
searching for it. We might
We
find it.
actually didn't find any gene seed. Like, was it the last time that you and me played? Maybe it was when I was playing with Rory and Adam. But we didn't find gene seed all night. It was a desert, a gene seed desert.
Starved for Gene
Oh,
Seed.
I was so thirsty by the end of the evening. It was bad. But it was you, right? It was you and me and Jack was when we were playing during the week, and I
I
had
thought
the
we
gene
found
seed,
Seed,
and
but then you
the hive
died.
tyrant fucking kebabbed me. That was so good.
Well, there's more context. I mean, I took all
Uh,
your stims.
that is also true. Space Marine 2, brilliant game. Okay. Aiden says, even though he cheated, he still lost the game because he didn't cheat properly. That's rough. Not only are you a cheater, but you also have a skill issue, which is
I think
like,
I identified earlier that only very good players and very bad players cheat, and sometimes the very bad
oh
players, it doesn't
god.
make a difference.
Aiden's like the 2-2, desperate for the 3-2 cheater. Oh, Aiden. This feels rough, bro. Obviously, I love Aiden,
See,
which, you know.
Dara's so bad at cheating, he cheats himself. Like, what was it? How long did you go without knowing the Exalted 8-bound thing
Oh
was an
yeah, I'm a
aura?
fiend for this. It's just like, maybe brother, you should read the fucking data sheet before. It was this time last year that I realized that the Exalted 8-bound were an aura instead of just the unit they're touching. But this is like, I only found out like this summer that Exalted 8-bound have 4 attacks with the Chain Fist when they charge. I played it as 3. I was just like, oh, 2 to 3. That makes sense. You know, it's a heavy weapon. And I was like going to, I think it was the Bristol GT, and I was like, oh, I'm bringing a lot of Exalted 8-bound. Better make sure I'm real familiar with their numbers, even though I know them off by heart. It was on the plane. My eyes were just like, it's
I
always Exalted 8-bound, dude. I just messed that profile up
I
so
thought the
much.
sergeant had the same amount of attacks as the. So he should have 6 attacks. I thought
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
rolling him as 4 for a while too. So
yeah. All right, let's move on. So, my counter 4 plus cheat strategy. I actually don't know. Oh, the
that
4 foot
was
Lehman Russ move.
that was when I
Yes.
was talking about the counter cheat, where if somebody cheats you, you cheat them back by
Yeah.
suddenly playing Hypercrypt.
Don says he's asked for a TO to sit at the table for someone with a history, and Rin says that's uncomfortable. But actually, I'm like all for that. I'm like, yep, that's
As I mean, I had to do that a little bit at the GT I just TO'd. I mean, that's up to the TO then to disguise it. You got to do your walk bys real slow
oh, bro,
and
I'll
come
pull out the
back.
chair and I'll grab the popcorn. If I'm TOing, I'm like, yep, cool.
See, this is where it just gets solved when you have the guy with the paintball sniper at the top of the building
Yeah, I think,
with the
yeah.
binoculars just like honed in.
I feel like I have a rep of people that are like, if I cheat at one of Dara's events, I might actually get thrown in the fucking river. But yeah,
That is true. Our strength numbers are random. Khorne should be strength 8. Can't change my mind.
yep. We had that discussion in Discord earlier. But I think for now, you reckon it's about time to close this one out?
Yeah. Um, I think we covered the topic. Thanks, guys, for asking questions and participating. We'll
Yeah.
probably have some more content coming out soon. I know the points are like right around the corner.
Yeah,
Um,
next couple of weeks actually could be quite busy. I have a really fun episode of the Skull Takers dropping next week where I'm interviewing someone, which I don't want to spoil anything, but it's going to be a really fun episode. Then we probably have the points update next week,
which I don't think world leaders are going to see much of a change. I wouldn't
but
be surprised if the
yeah.
only thing we see is Demon Prince down 20 points and that's it.
Oh god, I'll be straight back on Nongron if that happens.
Oh my God, we just gave you the sweet,
Oh,
sweet.
I just broke out. I was just allowed out of jail, and now I'm back. But yeah, so we've got that. If that comes out on Thursday, we'll probably stream. We'll probably make a video as well for the weekend. Then I think the week after, I should have out the very deep dive into combat mechanics and how to cheat in the combat phase. And around that time as well, my paint tutorials are going to start dropping again. So for anyone who's eager to get the hobby content, obviously, I'm super revitalized after no retreat, and I have some really cool stuff on the desk, which I'm very excited to make some videos about and show you guys how to paint. So until then, though, a lot of content ahead, and a lot of
Gotta,
good stuff to watch out for. I think
we got a few cool surprises coming involving WCW too.
we
Like
do.
some
Yeah, we
pretty,
do.
pretty cool stuff coming.
We're there. Yeah, November's going to be great for the Red Path. Really, really great. But stay tuned for that then. So for now, thank you very much for watching, guys. If you want to support us more, the best way is through Patreon. You can also like the video, show it to other people, maybe share it in your group. If you feel like there's a cheater in your group that you don't directly want to confront, maybe drop the video in and be like, hey guys, I watched this really interesting video. Maybe you should all watch it. And then you tag the person who's a cheater and you say, maybe you should watch it in particular, you little shit. Because that's what I do. But yeah, if you enjoyed it, do share it around. It would be nice actually to get the discussion going a little bit more. So, show it to people. Or check out Warphammer's article, because that was really good about cheating as well. So, for now, you know all the usual stuff to support us. You know where to find us. The links are in the video description. I've been Dara. This has been Brian. You've been watching The Red Path. And this has been episode 1 of Chill Game Learn. Excited to be back to it. We'll catch you guys for the next one. Stay healthy, stay safe, and kill, maim, burn. And we are out.